Pails and rails for the hip sleeper stretch. The aim of the sleeper stretch is to increase hip internal rotation. Start seated on the ground with the knees bent at 90 degrees and the torso leaning back slightly. You can place one hand behind the back to support the torso angle. Internally rotate one side of the hip by bringing the knee as close to the floor as you can without letting the hip lift off the floor. Place the same side hand on top of the knee and apply a small amount of downward force to increase the internal stretch on the hip. This is a passive stretch that we are going to hold for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, we'll perform 3 rounds of Pails and rails contractions. To perform the Pails contraction, we'll take a deep breath into the diaphragm. So breathe deep into the belly and push the belly out. We create tension throughout the whole body by contracting the muscles so that we resist all movement except for the movement happening in the hip capsule. We now drive the knee into the hand as if we're trying to externally rotate the hip by activating the glute. We slowly build the pressure. So you might start at 50%, then go 60, 70, 80, and increase that pressure slowly. The hand will resist the knee from moving, but we are trying to externally rotate the hip and build that pressure slowly. We typically hold this Pails contraction for 10 to 15 seconds before moving on to the rails contraction. To perform the rails contraction, we now try to actively pull the knee closer to the floor with hip internal rotation. Again, the hip must stay on the floor as we activate the inner thigh muscles and pull the knee closer to the floor. We typically hold this rails contraction for 10 to 15 seconds before moving on to another Pails contraction. We repeat the Pails and rails contractions for 3 rounds. Notice after each round of Pails and rails, the knee moves slightly closer to the floor as the range of motion in the hip increases. Remember to breathe while holding the contractions and focus on the rotation coming from the hip.